The art of war is simple enough. Find out where your enemy is. Get at him as soon as you can. Strike him as hard as you can and keep moving. Ulysses S. Grant. Most people believe the world rewards hard work. They think putting in long hours and pushing themselves to exhaustion is the path to success. They are wrong. The world rewards calculated action. It favors those who understand the board, anticipate the moves of their opponents, and position themselves for long-term advantage. Sheer effort without strategic insight is merely wasted energy. It's running in place, while the truly effective players are already 3 steps ahead, building systems and securing resources that will make their eventual victory inevitable. The difference between the winners and the losers isn't just about intelligence, although that certainly plays a role. It's about mindset. Losers react to immediate problems. They scramble to put out fires. They are constantly playing catch-up, driven by emotion and short-term pressures. Winners, on the other hand, think in terms of systems and patterns. They identify the underlying forces at play, the levers of influence, and the points of vulnerability. They don't just see the immediate challenge. They see the entire landscape, the potential chain reactions, and the long-term consequences of their actions. They understand that a single, well-placed move today can create a cascade of advantages tomorrow. Consider a game of chess. A novice player focuses on capturing pieces, reacting to the immediate threat posed by their opponent. A grandmaster, however, is thinking several moves ahead. They are sacrificing pawns to control key squares, setting up traps, and building a strategic advantage that may not be immediately apparent but will ultimately lead to checkmate. They aren't driven by the immediate gratification of taking a piece. They are driven by the long-term goal of winning the game. This same principle applies to every domain, from business to politics to personal relationships. Those who prioritize immediate gains over long-term strategic positioning are destined to be outmaneuvered and ultimately defeated. The key is to shift your focus from reacting to planning. Instead of constantly putting out fires, identify the root causes of those fires and implement preventative measures. Instead of scrambling to meet deadlines, build systems that streamline your workflow and create a buffer against unforeseen circumstances. Instead of focusing on short-term profits, invest in long-term relationships and strategic partnerships that will pay dividends down the road. This requires discipline, patience, and a willingness to delay gratification. It means resisting the urge to react emotionally and instead taking a step back to analyze the situation objectively. It means understanding that true success is not about working harder, it's about working smarter. It's about identifying the high-leverage activities that will produce the greatest return on your investment of time and energy. It's about building a system that allows you to consistently outperform your competition, not through brute force, but through strategic positioning and calculated risk. It's about recognizing that the world is not a level playing field, and that those who understand the rules of the game are always going to have an advantage over those who don't. Therefore, to truly win, you must not only learn the rules, you must master them. Advantage is not a matter of luck. It's a product of deliberate thought and meticulous preparation. It stems from the ability to anticipate future events and position yourself accordingly. This requires a fundamental shift in mindset, one that moves beyond the reactive and embraces the proactive. The reactive mind is perpetually trapped in the present, responding to immediate threats and opportunities without considering the long-term consequences. It's driven by emotion and instinct, often leading to impulsive decisions that undermine strategic goals. The proactive mind, on the other hand, is constantly scanning the horizon, identifying potential challenges and opportunities long before they become apparent to others. It's guided by reason and logic, allowing for calculated decisions based on a thorough understanding of the situation. This difference is crucial. To play the long game requires distancing yourself from the immediate emotional response and engaging the analytical portions of the mind. Consider the chess player who sacrifices a pawn early in the game. To the untrained eye, it may appear to be a foolish move, a needless loss of material. But the experienced player understands that this sacrifice is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. It's a calculated risk designed to disrupt the opponent's development, control key squares on the board, and ultimately gain a positional advantage. This is the essence of strategic thinking, the willingness to accept short-term losses in exchange for long-term gains. It demands a certain level of detachment, the ability to view the situation objectively without being swayed by emotion. Fear, greed, and impatience are the enemies of strategic thought. They cloud judgment, distort perception, and lead to costly mistakes. The truly strategic mind is calm, focused, and disciplined, capable of making rational decisions even under pressure. This is not an innate talent. It's a skill that can be developed through practice and conscious effort. The psychology of foresight is deeply rooted in understanding human behavior, both your own and that of others. Knowing the predictable patterns of human response allows you to anticipate reactions and tailor your strategies accordingly. People are, by nature, creatures of habit. They tend to repeat patterns of behavior that have been successful in the past, even when those patterns are no longer appropriate. This predictability can be exploited to your advantage. By understanding your own biases and tendencies, you can avoid falling into predictable traps and make more rational decisions. By understanding the biases and tendencies of others, you can anticipate their reactions and influence their behavior. This is the essence of manipulation, but it can also be used for more benevolent purposes, such as persuading people to adopt healthier habits or to support a worthy cause. The power of prediction is not magic. It's simply the result of careful observation and analysis. The ability to see beyond the immediate horizon requires cultivating a certain level of intellectual curiosity. You must be willing to question your assumptions, challenge your beliefs, and seek out new information from a variety of sources. This is not about becoming a know-it-all. It's about developing a more nuanced and comprehensive understanding of the world. The more you know, the better equipped you will be to anticipate future events and make informed decisions. Intellectual curiosity is not just about acquiring knowledge. It's about developing a critical thinking mindset. It's about being able to analyze information, identify patterns, and draw logical conclusions. It's about being able to see the forest for the trees, to understand the big picture rather than getting bogged down in the details. This requires a willingness to engage with complex ideas and to challenge the status quo. It means being open to new perspectives and willing to change your mind when presented with new evidence. Cultivating foresight also necessitates embracing a degree of uncertainty. The future is inherently unpredictable. No matter how carefully you plan, there will always be unforeseen events that disrupt your best-laid plans. The key is not to try to eliminate uncertainty, which is impossible, but to learn to manage it. This means developing contingency plans, diversifying your resources, and building resilience into your systems. It means being prepared to adapt to changing circumstances and to pivot when necessary. The most successful strategists are not those who can predict the future with certainty. They are those who can adapt to whatever the future throws their way. This requires a certain level of flexibility, both mental and physical. It means being willing to let go of your preconceived notions and to embrace new opportunities as they arise. It means being comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty, and being able to make decisions even when you don't have all the information you would like. The future belongs to those who are prepared to embrace it, not those who try to control it. Finally, the psychology of foresight is intertwined with the concept of delayed gratification. Immediate rewards are alluring, but they often come at the expense of long-term goals. True strategic advantage arises from the ability to prioritize future success over immediate pleasure. This demands a strength of character, a capacity to resist temptation, and an unwavering focus on the ultimate objective. It's about understanding that the most valuable rewards are often those that require the greatest sacrifice and the longest time to achieve. Building a successful business, cultivating a strong relationship, mastering a difficult skill. These are all endeavors that require patience, perseverance, and a willingness to delay gratification. The allure of instant gratification is a powerful force, but it's one that must be resisted if you want to achieve true success. The ability to delay gratification is not just a matter of willpower, it's a reflection of your values and your priorities. It's about understanding what truly matters to you and being willing to make the sacrifices necessary to achieve your goals. Advantage, therefore, is more than a position. It is a state of mind. Consider the rise and fall of blockbuster video. For years, they dominated the home entertainment market, a seemingly unassailable giant. They had a vast network of stores, a recognizable brand, and a loyal customer base. Their initial success stemmed from a simple innovation, making movies readily accessible to the masses. Before Blockbuster, renting a movie often involved limited selection and inconvenient hours. Blockbuster changed that, offering a wide variety of titles and extended operating hours. But their dominance bred complacency. They became so focused on their existing business model, brick-and-mortar stores and late fees, that they failed to see the disruptive potential of new technologies. While Blockbuster was busy optimizing its existing infrastructure, Netflix was quietly building a streaming service that would eventually render the video rental store obsolete. Netflix understood a fundamental shift in consumer behavior. People wanted instant access to content, without the hassle of driving to a store and paying late fees. Blockbuster dismissed Netflix as a niche player, a competitor that posed no real threat to their empire. They saw streaming as a fad, something that would never replace the experience of browsing shelves and holding a physical copy of a movie. This short-sightedness proved to be their undoing. They had the resources, the brand recognition, and the customer base to compete with Netflix, but they lacked the vision to see the future. They were too focused on protecting their existing business to embrace the new opportunities that were emerging. Their strategic miscalculation was compounded by a series of tactical errors. They had the chance to buy Netflix early on, but they passed on the opportunity, deeming the asking price too high. They also failed to invest in their own streaming service, instead clinging to their outdated business model. The result was a catastrophic decline. Blockbuster's stores closed, its stock price plummeted, and the company eventually filed for bankruptcy. Netflix, on the other hand, thrived. They continued to innovate, expanding their library of content, investing in original programming, and building a global streaming platform. They anticipated the future of entertainment and positioned themselves to capitalize on it. The Blockbuster story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of complacency and the importance of foresight. It demonstrates how a dominant player can be quickly overtaken by a competitor that is more attuned to the changing landscape. Blockbuster's failure was not simply a matter of bad luck or unforeseen circumstances. It was a result of strategic miscalculations, a failure to anticipate future trends, and an unwillingness to adapt to new technologies. Their focus was on defending what they already had, not on creating what could be. This is a common trap for successful companies. They become so invested in their existing business model that they fail to see the disruptive potential of new technologies. They become complacent, arrogant, and unwilling to change. They are like generals who are still fighting the last war, unaware that the battlefield has shifted. The Blockbuster example illustrates how a failure of foresight can lead to catastrophic consequences, even for companies that seem invincible. It is a reminder that advantage is not a static condition. It must be constantly cultivated and defended. Companies must be vigilant, constantly scanning the horizon for new threats and opportunities. They must be willing to adapt, to innovate, and to embrace change. The future belongs to those who can anticipate it, not those who try to control it. The ability to predict future trends is not about possessing magical powers or having access to secret information. It is about paying attention to the signals that are already present in the world. It is about understanding the underlying forces that are shaping the future, such as technological advancements, demographic shifts, and changing consumer preferences. It is about being able to connect the dots and see the bigger picture. Foresight is not about predicting the future with certainty. It is about understanding the range of possible futures and preparing for them accordingly. It is about being able to adapt to whatever comes your way. Advantage is not about having all the answers. It is about asking the right questions. The inability to ask the right questions stems from a deeper flaw, a focus on immediate gratification and the avoidance of uncomfortable truths. Many individuals and organizations prioritize short-term gains over long-term sustainability, seduced by the allure of quick wins and easily attainable goals. This myopic perspective blinds them to the potential consequences of their actions, making them vulnerable to unforeseen risks and unexpected challenges. They fail to recognize that true advantage is not built on fleeting success, but on a foundation of resilience and adaptability. They chase the immediate reward, neglecting to invest in the development of future capabilities. The result is a gradual erosion of their competitive position, as they become increasingly out of touch with the evolving needs of the market. This short-sightedness is often masked by a veneer of optimism and self-assurance, a belief that their current success will continue indefinitely. They dismiss warnings and ignore dissenting voices, clinging to the status quo with unwavering conviction. This denial of reality creates a dangerous vulnerability as they become increasingly isolated from the forces that are shaping their future. The trap is sprung when their carefully constructed illusion of control shatters, revealing the precariousness of their position. They are left scrambling to react to events that they should have anticipated, their resources depleted, and their options limited. The failure to cultivate foresight is not merely a strategic error. It is a reflection of a deeper psychological weakness, a lack of intellectual curiosity, and a fear of uncertainty. Those who are truly committed to achieving lasting advantage embrace the unknown and actively seek out new information. They understand that the world is constantly changing, and that the only way to stay ahead is to continuously learn and adapt. They are not afraid to challenge their own assumptions and to question the conventional wisdom. They are willing to experiment, to take risks, and to learn from their mistakes. It is this spirit of intellectual humility that allows them to see opportunities where others see only obstacles. The weak, however, are content to remain in their comfort zones, avoiding the discomfort of intellectual growth. They are more concerned with preserving their existing beliefs than with discovering new truths. They cling to the familiar, resisting any attempt to disrupt their carefully constructed worldview. This intellectual stagnation leads to a gradual decline in their ability to perceive and respond to change. They become increasingly rigid and inflexible, unable to adapt to the evolving demands of the environment. The trap is not simply a matter of bad luck or unforeseen circumstances. It is the inevitable consequence of a failure to cultivate the mental habits that are essential for long-term success. It is a testament to the power of foresight and the importance of embracing intellectual curiosity. The ability to anticipate future trends is not a mystical gift reserved for a select few. It is a skill that can be developed through diligent observation, critical thinking, and a willingness to challenge one's own assumptions. The strategist understands that power is not merely about brute force, but about the subtle art of manipulation and control. It's about understanding human nature, recognizing the hidden motivations that drive people's actions, and using that knowledge to influence their behavior. This isn't necessarily about malevolence. It's about understanding how systems work and how to achieve a desired outcome within those systems. The world is a chessboard, and people are the pieces. Some pieces are more valuable than others, and some positions are more advantageous. A skilled player doesn't just move their own pieces, they anticipate the moves of their opponents and position themselves to exploit their weaknesses. This requires a deep understanding of psychology, the ability to see the world from another person's perspective, and the patience to wait for the opportune moment. The Machiavellian approach recognizes that people are often driven by self-interest, fear, and the desire for recognition. These are not character flaws, but fundamental aspects of human nature. A wise leader understands these drives and uses them to motivate people towards a common goal. This might involve appealing to their ambition, allaying their fears, or offering them rewards for their contributions. It's not about coercion, but about creating a situation where people are incentivized to act in a way that benefits the overall strategy. This requires a nuanced understanding of power dynamics and the ability to build alliances and coalitions. The strategist knows that no one achieves success alone. They must cultivate relationships with people who can help them achieve their goals. This involves identifying individuals with complementary skills and resources, building trust and rapport, and offering them something of value in return. This is not simply a matter of networking. It's about creating a mutually beneficial ecosystem where everyone is working towards a common objective. The most effective strategies are often the ones that are hidden from view. A skilled strategist doesn't reveal their intentions prematurely, but instead operates in the shadows, gathering information, building alliances, and positioning themselves for a decisive strike. This requires a high degree of patience and self-control, the ability to withstand pressure, and the discipline to avoid impulsive actions. The long game is about calculated moves, not reckless gambles. It's about playing the odds, minimizing risks, and maximizing potential rewards. This requires a clear understanding of the rules of the game, the ability to assess the strengths and weaknesses of the players, and the foresight to anticipate future trends. The strategist understands that the world is constantly evolving and that they must be prepared to adapt their strategies accordingly. This requires a willingness to learn from their mistakes, to embrace new technologies, and to challenge their own assumptions. It's about being a lifelong student of the game, constantly seeking new ways to improve their skills and expand their knowledge. The ultimate goal is not simply to win, but to create a sustainable system that can continue to generate success over the long term. This requires a focus on building strong foundations, developing talent, and fostering a culture of innovation. It's about creating an organization that is resilient, adaptable, and capable of weathering any storm. The Machiavellian approach is not without its critics. Some argue that it is cynical, manipulative, and unethical. However, proponents of this approach argue that it is simply a realistic assessment of human nature and the dynamics of power. They contend that, in a world where others are constantly seeking to gain an advantage, it is necessary to be strategic and calculating in order to protect oneself and achieve one's goals. The key is to use these strategies responsibly and ethically, always bearing in mind the long-term consequences of one's actions. The strategist understands that power is a double-edged sword and that it must be wielded with care and wisdom. The historical record is replete with examples where foresight, or its absence, determined the fate of empires. Consider the Roman Empire, an entity that for centuries dominated the Mediterranean world. Its success wasn't simply built on military might, but on a strategic vision that understood the importance of infrastructure, resource management, and political alliances. They invested heavily in roads, aqueducts, and fortifications, creating a system that facilitated trade, communication, and defense. This long-term thinking allowed them to consolidate their power and expand their influence far beyond their initial territories. They also understood the importance of assimilating conquered peoples, offering them citizenship and opportunities for advancement within the empire. This helped to create a sense of loyalty and shared identity, reducing the likelihood of rebellion and fostering a more stable and prosperous society. The Romans planned for the long game, understanding that their empire was not built in a day, and that its survival depended on continuous investment and adaptation. Their ability to anticipate future challenges, such as barbarian invasions and economic crises, allowed them to develop strategies to mitigate these threats and maintain their dominance for centuries. However, the Roman Empire eventually declined and fell, not because of a lack of military power, but because of a failure to adapt to changing circumstances and a decline in strategic thinking. Political corruption, economic inequality, and a lack of innovation weakened the empire from within, making it vulnerable to external threats. The Romans lost their long-term vision, becoming focused on short-term gains and internal power struggles. This allowed their enemies to exploit their weaknesses and ultimately bring about their downfall. The lesson here is clear. Even the most powerful empire can be brought down by a lack of foresight and a failure to adapt to changing circumstances. The Roman example demonstrates that strategic thinking is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process that requires constant vigilance and adaptation. Similarly, consider the Napoleonic Wars, a series of conflicts that reshaped Europe in the early 19th century. Napoleon Bonaparte was a brilliant military strategist who understood the importance of speed, surprise, and concentrated force. He was able to defeat larger and more experienced armies by anticipating their moves and exploiting their weaknesses. His campaigns were characterized by rapid maneuvers, daring attacks, and a willingness to take calculated risks. He understood that victory often went to the side that could think and act faster than its opponent. Napoleon also understood the importance of logistics, ensuring that his troops were well supplied and equipped. He reorganized the French army, creating a more efficient and flexible fighting force. This allowed him to project his power across Europe and conquer vast territories. However, Napoleon's ambition ultimately led to his downfall. He became obsessed with conquering all of Europe, ignoring the limitations of his resources and the growing resistance to his rule. His invasion of Russia in 1812 was a strategic blunder that decimated his army and weakened his empire. He underestimated the harsh conditions of the Russian winter and the determination of the Russian people. This campaign proved to be the turning point of the Napoleonic Wars, leading to his eventual defeat and exile. Napoleon's example demonstrates that even the most brilliant strategist can be undone by hubris and a failure to recognize the limits of their power. Foresight requires not only the ability to anticipate future events, but also the humility to acknowledge one's own limitations and the willingness to adapt to changing circumstances. The key is to avoid becoming complacent and to constantly reassess one's strategies in light of new information and developments. The strategist must also be aware of the potential for unintended consequences, understanding that every action can have ripple effects that are difficult to predict. This requires a careful consideration of all possible outcomes and a willingness to adjust one's plans accordingly. Ultimately, advantage favors foresight because it allows one to anticipate challenges, exploit opportunities, and adapt to changing circumstances. It is not simply about predicting the future, but about understanding the underlying forces that shape events and developing strategies to navigate them effectively. The strategist must be a lifelong learner, constantly seeking new knowledge and insights to inform their decisions. They must also be able to think critically and challenge their own assumptions, avoiding the pitfalls of groupthink and confirmation bias. By cultivating these skills, one can gain a significant advantage in any endeavor, whether it is in business, politics, or personal life. The psychology of foresight is rooted in several key cognitive abilities. One is the capacity for abstract thought, the ability to imagine different scenarios and their potential outcomes. This involves stepping outside the immediate present and considering the long-term implications of one's actions. It also requires the ability to think counterfactually, to imagine how things might have been different if different choices had been made. This kind of mental simulation allows one to learn from past mistakes and to anticipate potential problems in the future. Another crucial element is self-awareness. A strategist must have a clear understanding of their own biases, motivations, and limitations. This requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about oneself and to acknowledge areas where improvement is needed. Without self-awareness, it is easy to fall prey to wishful thinking and to make decisions based on ego rather than reason. A related concept is emotional regulation, the ability to control one's emotions and to prevent them from clouding one's judgment. Fear, anger, and greed can all lead to impulsive decisions that undermine long-term goals. The strategist must be able to remain calm and rational under pressure, even in the face of uncertainty and adversity. This requires a high degree of emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage one's own emotions and the emotions of others. Emotional intelligence also involves empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. This is particularly important in situations where one is dealing with other people, whether it is negotiating a business deal or leading a team. By understanding the motivations and perspectives of others, one can anticipate their actions and develop strategies that are more likely to succeed. Cognitive flexibility is another important component of foresight. This is the ability to adapt to changing circumstances and to adjust one's plans accordingly. The world is constantly changing, and what works in one situation may not work in another. The strategist must be able to think on their feet and to come up with creative solutions to unexpected problems. This requires a willingness to abandon outdated assumptions and to embrace new ideas. It also requires a tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty, the ability to make decisions without having all the information one would like. Furthermore, the psychology of foresight involves a certain level of risk tolerance. All strategic decisions involve some degree of risk, and the strategist must be willing to accept the possibility of failure. However, this does not mean being reckless or impulsive. Rather, it means carefully weighing the potential risks and rewards of different options and choosing the course of action that offers the best chance of success. This requires a sophisticated understanding of probability and statistics, the ability to assess the likelihood of different outcomes, and to make informed decisions based on incomplete information. A crucial aspect is also the ability to delay gratification. Many strategic decisions require sacrificing short-term gains for long-term benefits. This can be difficult, especially in a world that is increasingly focused on instant gratification. The strategist must be able to resist the temptation of immediate rewards and to focus on the long-term consequences of their actions. This requires a high degree of self-discipline and a commitment to one's goals. Finally, foresight involves a certain degree of intellectual curiosity. The strategist must be constantly seeking new knowledge and insights, reading widely, and engaging in intellectual discussions. This requires a lifelong commitment to learning and a willingness to challenge one's own assumptions. By constantly expanding one's knowledge base, one can develop a more nuanced understanding of the world and a greater ability to anticipate future events. The integration of these cognitive abilities allows for a deeper understanding of complex systems, leading to more effective strategic planning. This approach emphasizes proactive adaptation, transforming potential threats into opportunities, and ensuring sustainable success in any competitive environment. The history of business offers countless examples of advantage favoring foresight, but the story of Xerox and the personal computer stands out as a particularly stark illustration. In the 1970s, Xerox PARC, their Palo Alto Research Center, was a hotbed of innovation, responsible for developing many of the foundational technologies we take for granted today in personal computing. They invented the graphical user interface, the mouse, Ethernet, and laser printing. Imagine holding the keys to the future of computing in your hands, only to let them slip through your fingers. This wasn't a case of lacking the technology. Xerox had it all. The failure was a strategic one, a failure of foresight and a lack of understanding of the transformative potential of their own inventions. Xerox was primarily a copier company, and its executives were deeply invested in the existing business model. They saw the personal computer as a distraction, a niche product that wouldn't contribute significantly to their core revenue streams. They couldn't envision a future where computing would be decentralized, where individuals would have powerful machines on their desks. This short-sightedness blinded them to the immense opportunity that lay before them. They failed to grasp the systemic shift that was about to occur, the paradigm shift from centralized computing to personal computing. The engineers at PARC understood the potential, but they lacked the power to influence the strategic direction of the company. They were essentially shouting into the void, their warnings and insights ignored by executives who were more concerned with protecting the status quo. This highlights a critical point about foresight. It's not enough to have brilliant ideas. You need the organizational structure and the leadership to recognize and act on them. Xerox's corporate culture was also a contributing factor. It was a hierarchical, bureaucratic organization, resistant to change and innovation. Ideas from the bottom rarely made their way to the top, and when they did, they were often dismissed or watered down. This stifled creativity and prevented the company from adapting to the changing technological landscape. The story of Xerox PARC serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of strategic myopia. It demonstrates how a company with immense resources and talent can fail to capitalize on groundbreaking innovations if it lacks the foresight to see their potential and the strategic agility to adapt to change. They focused on their existing strengths, which blinded them to the emerging opportunities. They were so focused on improving their copier technology that they missed the entire personal computer revolution. In contrast, companies like Apple and Microsoft, founded by individuals with a clearer vision of the future, were quick to recognize the potential of the technologies developed at Xerox PARC. Steve Jobs famously visited PARC and was blown away by what he saw. He understood immediately that the graphical user interface and the mouse were the future of computing. While Xerox